So, my mom and I have this running joke that I could, if I wanted to, do an entire album of just pictures of the kids asleep in their car seats in the backseat of the car. And so, that is exactly what this video is going to be. Are you ready for this? Hey everyone, and welcome back to Office Hours here at the Professor's Kitchen, where I sit down in my office and I attempt to teach you a little something. So, months ago, I promised a video on traveling without car seats. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? It was a long time ago. It was a really, really long time ago. But I'm finally going to sit down and tell you how you can travel without car seats. Now, these are just some suggestions of things that we've done to avoid traveling with car seats because let's face it, car seats are expensive. They're very bulky, they're heavy, they're hard to manage. And yeah, I've seen so many people, so many parents traveling around in the airports with their kids like trailing behind them in the car seats. They're trying to check the car seat, or they have to get onto the plane early to be able to get the car seat into the seat and get the kid into the car seat, in the seat, on the plane. And it's just a lot. It's just too much. I just think it's too much. Personally, I think it's too much. It's a lot. While I'm telling you about different ways that you can travel without your car seats, I am going to try to show you some of the adorable pictures of my kids asleep in the backseat of the car in car seats that we've either purchased, not purchased, rented, all sorts of different things. So, buckle in. Get it, car seat. Buckle in. Because these are the ways that we have gone the last almost 8 years without traveling with our car seats. Are you ready? Now, you could probably skip this entire video and just listen to this number one rule about traveling without car seats, and that is baby wearing. That is it. That is the big, huge secret to traveling without car seats is simply baby wearing. Now, this is not for everyone. If you have a little chunky baby and he or she is too heavy to baby wear, I totally get it. This may not be the route for you. You should probably invest in an umbrella stroller or something like that, or borrow one from a neighbor or whatever. But that is the number one way that we have gotten away with not traveling with our car seats is baby wearing. My husband and I take turns, or we took turns when we only had one kid. And after we had two, there was one for each of us. So we just had our own separate carriers and we just went. Now, backstory, we've been traveling with my son since he was about 6 months old. And his very first trip outside of the country was to Thailand. Now, this wasn't a very big trip for us because at the time we happened to live in South Korea. And getting around with him in South Korea, because the laws are a little different and I would say a little more relaxed than they are in the States, we didn't really have to put him into a car seat when we were going just down the road, for instance, to grab some dinner or something. We could hop into the back of a taxi with him just strapped to us, and it was totally fine. We never got in any sort of trouble or anything like that with traveling around with him. Now, if we did have to go somewhere a little bit farther than that, then we would definitely put him into a car seat. We had a car seat for him, but we very rarely ever used it, and he hated it. He screamed like crazy. He screamed and cried his little head off anytime he had to be inside of this car seat. And so it was just better for all of us. He was happier if we did not try to stick him into a car seat. So it ended up working out really well for us to just buy an Ergo baby carrier and to carry him around. Now, I'm not promoting any one particular baby carrier. The Ergo worked best for us, but I also made myself a ring sling at one point after I had my daughter because that seemed to work a little bit better with her. I also had a boba wrap that I used while we were on vacation in Thailand and other places. It was softer, I was just walking around the house with him and I didn't want to have that sort of heavy material rubbing up against my neck or rubbing up against his face, then I might switch over to the wrap, or you might like a wrap conversion. There are Tulas and Bjorns and all sorts of different baby carriers. So just try to find the one that works best for you and your baby and stick with that. Maybe just try another one here and there if you feel like you need, for instance, a mesh carrier to go in the pool or whatever. Try them out, see which one works for best for you, and use that one. But again, it is the end of an era. We finally, this year, just recently, got rid of our Ergo carrier because our kids were just really little and we were able to go just about everywhere with them. They were still under the weight limit, or the suggested weight maximum for the Ergo carrier. So we used it much until they were no longer toddlers. I was still able pretty much to put my 5-year-old into my Ergo carrier with not a whole lot of issue whatsoever. But again, if you have kids that are a little chubbier, maybe a little bit heavier, my kids are now very, very dense. So doing anything like that with them, trying to even just strap them onto my back or have them to hang on to my back is painful. So I would not recommend it at this point. But do what works for you and your little one. But again, my son started traveling. We started traveling with him when he was about 6 months old. We did go to Thailand. I took the Ergo with me. I also took the wrap with me, and I used both of them while we were there. And one way that we were able to get away with not taking the car seat onto the plane, and before I say this, you should definitely check with the airlines to find out their restrictions when it comes to traveling with infants on airplanes. But we were able to wear him through the airport onto the plane. Once we got onto the plane, we had already booked ahead the infant cot, the baby cot, or they call it, either a baby cot or a cradle or bassinet or whatever. It attaches to the wall in front of the seat. And so, if for no other reason than just to give yourself a little bit more leg room, you may want to check ahead and book ahead and find out if the airline has those cradles or baby cots available, so that you can just book that particular seat or that particular row to have room for your extra baby stuff. So because we know if you're watching this video, you probably already have kids and you know that they have just a lot of stuff. You have the baby bag in addition to your bag and your spouse or partner's bag and all of this other stuff. So just to have the additional leg room, it is really, really nice to go ahead and book that baby cot. Once we were up in the air, I was able to take my son off. It was a relatively short flight. So when we found out that he did not like the baby cot at all, it was no real big deal. He didn't start like screaming and fussing or anything like that on the plane. We just took him out and we put the bags up inside of the bassinet instead. And we had the extra floor space to kind of put him down, let him stand up for a second, which made him very, very happy. And that's all we want, is for him to be happy. So that was trip number 1. We got away with going to and from Thailand with no incident with him, no car seat. We took taxis and buses and stuff while we were there. We wore him the entire time and he was happy, he was safe, he was comfortable. I always feel really safe having him close to me. And if I need to put a seatbelt over my lap or across his back, when he's front facing, so when he's facing me, I can put the car seat belt across his back and keep him right up next to me. And I personally felt very, very safe with that. It's a little different when you get back to the States, and you have to follow all of the rules and regulations. But again, check with the country, check that you're going to or visiting, and also check with the airline to see if that is an option. Rules also vary between the United States, Europe, and Asia. So once we got to Germany, we moved to Germany, and the rules there were a little bit different, but most of the taxis we found had booster seats inside of the back of the taxi, which I thought was just the coolest thing ever. So they didn't necessarily want us to keep the children on our laps or wear the children in the back seat of a taxi, but what they did have were these cute little seats that just popped up from the regular seat, and the kids were on little boosters in the back seat of the taxi. So that was a wonderful feature that again allowed us to travel with the kids without the car seats and not worry about their safety at all, because at that point they were a little bit bigger and they were old enough, big enough to sit in the back seat by themselves on these boosters with the regular seatbelt. So that was totally amazing, very surprising. We had no idea that that was going to happen, but all they needed was booster seats there, and that was the rule. So we followed the rules, and we were able to go pretty much everywhere around in Europe with again our baby carriers and using the seats that were available in the back seat, the boosters that were available in the back seat of the taxis. Another way that you can get away with traveling without car seats is simply by renting a car seat at your destination. So we've done this a couple of different ways. When we were going to visit family and we knew that we were going to need a car seat, that the family members that we were visiting didn't have car seats in the back of their cars, we on one occasion purchased a car seat and had it sent to them so that it was already there and installed when we arrived in the middle of the night with our two little sleeping babies. But on other occasions, we've simply rented a car. Most car rental companies have car seats available for rent, and they will put them in there for you on some instances. Other times, you will have to allow yourself a few extra minutes to put the car seat in yourself. But this has saved us in so many different places. When we visited family in Chicago, we were able to rent them. We moved to Texas, we didn't have the car seats with us. And so or car seat, we only had one kid back then. We didn't have a car seat, so we were able to rent it with the car. And we did, in that instance, have to put it in ourselves, which was fine. We also rented when we went on vacation in Spain, and we got two really nice car seats that looked like they were very fancy, very expensive. Um, Probably the most luxurious car seats the kids have ever been in, but it was great. It was great. They looked brand new. They didn't look like they had ever been used. They were nice and clean. So I didn't worry about sticking them in the car seats and, of course, letting them fall asleep in the backseat of the car because that is what they do. And so anytime we had to drive any long distances, like for instance, when we flew into Spain, we flew into Malaga and then we drove to Marbella, and we were able to get a rental vehicle with the car seats in Malaga, and then that hour and a half long drive from Malaga to Marbella. The kids were asleep in the back seat of the car the entire time, totally comfortable, had a great trip. And anywhere that we went during that trip, we were there for about a week or so. We put them in those car seats and just went, and they were so comfortable that I kid you not, pretty much every single time we got in the car, the kids were out like that. And so it was really nice to have that peace and quiet, and also to have the peace of mind that they were safe on our trip. So, just briefly, I'll talk about sort of the expense of doing all of this. Now, obviously, traveling by itself, especially if you're traveling overseas, can be very expensive. So, why not save yourself a little bit of money by either renting a car seat, which typically is just for like a nominal fee? I've seen it as low as like $50 for the car seat rental. I don't think that that's a whole lot to pay, considering that the price of car seats is just astronomical. And then just again, the peace of mind of not having to worry about whether your car seat is going to make it to the destination, having to wait once you've checked that bag or that cart, that big, bulky, oversized item, having to wait at the airport to get it, worrying that it's not going to make it to your destination. I mean, any number of things, as you all probably already know, can happen when you're traveling with something that big. If you're traveling with like golf clubs, the same thing could happen. You never know what shape they're going to end up showing up in. You don't know if they're going to arrive at the same time that you arrive. I mean, just craziness. And yes, of course, you can be compensated for all of that. But again, having the peace of mind, just getting to the airport, knowing that when you arrive, all you have to do is grab your bags, hopefully, and then go out to your rental car and you already have the car seats there, or you can put them in yourself once you get there. I think it saves you a whole lot of time, a whole lot of frustration. And of course, there is a fee or an expense associated with that, but I think it's totally worth it to, again, have that peace of mind and just not have to worry about those big, bulky car seats and trying to navigate through the airport with them. Now that the kids are big enough, old enough, we actually purchased some super cheap booster seats for them right before we left Germany. And the booster seats, I think my husband said, were like $10 each. So $20 for them to have these very lightweight, I think they're made out of like a styrofoam material with some fabric covering them. Those booster seats have been total lifesavers. They're wonderful. I don't expect them to hold up for a really long time or anything, but it's nice to have a set of booster seats in my car and another set of booster seats in my husband's car, and not having to worry about switching them out from one car to the other. So these cute little $10 a piece booster seats got us from Germany to the States and everywhere else that we wanted to go. They're lightweight enough that the kids can carry them themselves, which is wonderful, so wonderful. Because again, those car seats are just so hard. They're so bulky. They're so heavy. They're so difficult to get through the airport that now we can just be like, grab your booster and let's go. And they can pick up their booster seats and carry them with them. They have little like hooks, little handles on them so that they can maneuver those in and out of cars themselves. So, in closing, I promise you that traveling with kids will definitely get easier. But when they're little, if they're infants and toddlers, don't worry about traveling with them. Keep in mind that you can definitely do this. You can do this, I promise you. You don't have to sacrifice yourself, like just not traveling at all because you think that it's going to be too expensive or too much of a hassle. You can absolutely start traveling with little ones. Fun fact, at 6 months old, that is the recommended age, or it was, at least with my son, the 6 months. That was the recommended age that a child could get into the pool for the first time. And we eased my son into it by getting him into a really lovely saltwater pool in Thailand, and he loved it. Eventually, he loved it. He didn't like it right away. He was a little freaked out, but eventually he loved it. And he's quite the little water baby now. He loves swimming and jumping in the pool. And this was a really nice introduction to all of that. It was an introduction to traveling. Do try to start them young. That is my recommendation, my suggestion, that you do want to try to get them started traveling young. At this point, I would say our kids at 6, almost 6 and 7 years old are pretty much expert travelers now. They travel a lot. People ask us all the time on planes, like, oh, is this their first trip? And we're like, no. They are veteran travelers at this point. They have been so many different places. They've been to so many different countries. They are so comfortable traveling. And right about now, during a pandemic, they miss it. They miss it so much. They've told us so many times. Anytime my daughter, I ask her like what she wants to do for her birthday, she's like, I want to go on a trip. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you do. And she talks about going to Paris and eating macaroons. And she talks about going to all these wonderful exotic places. She has actually never been to Paris before. I didn't feel comfortable taking her, but they had a fabulous time at our last vacation in Croatia. You can check out the videos from our Croatian vacation and see how much fun the kids had. My daughter is definitely not a water baby. She will sit by the pool and she's totally comfortable. But anyway, I digress. I totally recommend that you get them started young, get your kids started young, start taking them on trips when they're infants. You can figure out so much about your kids. Like I found out that my kids, their ears hardly ever pop when they're on a flight. They're totally comfortable. You can find little activities and stuff for them to do. Certain airlines will provide them with activities, so it keeps them busy while they're on the flight. I mean, it's wonderful, and it's much easier than you think. But do make it as easy on yourself as possible by traveling without car seats. Ciao for now.